Good evening, everybody. My pleasure to be here and present to you the delegates from Israel and discuss about the challenges that we have in Israel in our education system, how we want to remain competitive on the markets, and what the vision that we have for the future. We are living in a very, very interesting time where we have a new synergy between education and technology. And we are excited about those times because we need this if we want actually to reach a scale and we want to reach impact, but at the same time, we strive to make education personal. So I'd like to take with you a different approach. I will not talk about technology. I will try to talk about a person from adolescence till he's maybe going up to the university, what life is all about in Israel, what's the culture that we have there, and how it all relates to what we are discussing today. So this is my daughter, Vered. I always take my family as examples, and I think that's an excellent example. That's when she was very young, and one thing that you have in Israel when you are very young is, other than to go to school, you have so much free time where you can go and you do a lot of activities, and everything which is related to free choice activities and volunteerism is very, very something which is embedded in the Jewish and Israeli culture. So one thing that she did, she went to what we call in Israeli youth movement. She went to the Israeli Scout, which is very different even from those Americans over here that understand what scouting is all about, because in Israel, it is the kids that are the scout guides of younger kids. So think about it, that when you are in the age of 16, after being trained for 1 year, then you receive in your responsibility another group of, let's say, 10 to 20, even 25 younger kids, which are maybe the age of 10, and you are their mentor for the entire year. Now, when you completed that, you move on, and then you now mentoring other scout guides, and you move up, and this something that builds your relation, your development, your character, everything that we say, when we want to discuss soft skills, leadership, collaboration, you exercise this on a daily basis. And when she reached the age of 18, in Israel you have a mandatory military service, she decided to postpone it by 1 year, and she volunteered for working with unprivileged communities in Israel in order to bring them better education. So think about it, when she's now by the age of 22, 23, now she can enroll for the first time to university. Because before that she was busy, either volunteering or doing her military service. So when you are 22, 23, you think that the world is at your hands. So what are you learning? She said, I could learn everything. So she decided to go and learn biology major in the Tel Aviv University. Now, we in Israel, that's something that EdTech Israel is doing. Every year we do an EdTech Summit. So similar like you have here the GES, we have the Israeli EdTech Summit. And being a very good daughter, she volunteered and helped me for the past 3 summits for the very beginning. And one day she said to me, Dad, I understand when I listen to all the thought leaders speaking that in tomorrow's world, I need to be computing literate. I need to know something about computing, and I'm learning biology. It will not take me anywhere in my career. And I also need to learn entrepreneurship, because if I'm not going to be creative and innovate and being an entrepreneur, then how is my career going to look like? So after 1 year at the university, she switched, and she is now learning entrepreneurship and computer programming. She never wrote any line of code before that. And now she is applying for the Google Scholarship in order to help other women in Israel to and inspire them that even if they never learn coding before the age of 20, 23, 25, they can still do it at a certain age. So I connected here everything which related to personal development, career readiness, social equality, and gender equality. And all this, I think, is what we are going to hear today on the panel, that we are going to discuss everything which is related to the ecosystem, because ecosystem is a lot of things together. It's not just one part of the equation. So everything which is related to social businesses, higher education, investments, and philanthropy. So that's the cue to go to our panel.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Orit Hazzan. I'm from the Technion. The Technion is the Israel Institute of Technology. It's like MIT. It's one of the leading institutes in the world in general and in science and technology in particular. We have two international sites. One is in New York City. It is a graduate school, and one in China, in Shantou. Shantou, you know where is it? Say it correctly, okay. In Guangdong. I'll be there on Thursday. It's an undergraduate school. And I am the dean of the undergraduate studies at the Technion in the main campus in Haifa. We have 10,000 undergraduate studies and students. And the Technion is the main provider of the workers for the high-tech industry in Israel. He is one of them. Okay. So this is about the Technion, and I would like to talk with you about our students. So yesterday you heard from Saul Zinger and now from Yaki that our students, they finished high school, they go to the army. Sometimes they went before to the youth movement, but you forgot one thing. After the army, at the age of 21 or 22, they go to a trip to relax after the army service. So in many cases, they go to South America, they go to the Far East, and so when they come to learn the Technion, they are very smart, they know many things, but they are at the age of 22 or 23 or 24. So think about it and compare this age to the typical age of students, undergraduate students, who start studying in the US, in China, in many other countries. They are mature. They come to study a profession. Ben Nelson talked about yesterday about the fact that in many cases, young people go to college to have fun. When they come to the Technion, they come to have a profession, to be engineers, to be scientists. So first of all, they want a profession. They are at the age of 22 or 23 or 24, after the army service, after the long trip, it's usually long trip to the Far East of South America. And in many cases, they have families. So if you take everything together, you will understand that it's not a typical student, a young person. They should work because they want to be independent financially. They do not want to take money from their parents, so they should work. But what happens at the Technion is very unique, and it will explain many other things. Instead of working in traditional student works, like cleaning or serving, they work in professional jobs. Next to the Technion, we have a huge high-tech park with many of the international companies. They have sites there. We have Intel, Google, IBM, just name it, and we have a site in this park. And many of the students start working in these companies in the third, or sometimes in the second years of studies, out of 4. So that means that they work 2 or 3 years while they are studying in parallel. And it's not that they work for 2 or 3 hours a week, they work about 20 hours every week. So think about it, they are 23, 24, they study in the most difficult university in Israel, They are surrounded with many clever students, and instead of dedicating the entire week for studying, the part of the week, half of the week, they work. And they earn a lot of money, by the way. So at the age, furthermore, they are not willing to replace work with scholarship. We ask them specifically. And why? Because they want the work experience. They are the Y generation. They want to have a competitive advantages over their peers. And they know that if they graduate with some work experience, they will have this advantage. So think about it. They are finishing the undergraduate school at the age of 26 in the good, okay, they study more than 4 years because they work in parallel. So sometimes it takes them 6 years to complete their undergraduate studies. They are 28, 29, but they were in the youth movement, they were in the army, they worked for half-time job for 2 or 3 years. So you cannot compare their experience and maturity with other students, undergraduate students in other places. So, and all the characteristics that have mentioned here today about innovation, about social skills, about networking, they have a lot of big networking. They get out to the market and have all these qualities. So it's not surprising that they go out to school, they start their companies, they start their business, they are prepared for life. And I think that this is a part of the explanation to the startup nation.
So hi, my name is Lior. I'm the founder of Infogun. Infogun is a platform for kindergartens, preschool education. Basically, we're bridging the gap between what's happening at the preschool itself into what is happening at home. We're allowing parents to be more active in the education of their kids, understanding what the kid has learned in the preschool, in the kindergarten itself, and carrying on the education that they've learned over there at home. In that way, we're scaling and multiplying basically the impact of the education. But I want to talk about change today. This is what I do for a living, but I want to talk about deep change. And preschool education is a perfect example for that. Preschool education globally probably gets the less funds out of all ages. But if you look at the graph, in preschool education, this is the area where you have the most impact. Every dollar that you put in between the age of birth till 6 gets an ROI, a return on investment from taxpayers' money for the government as a grown-up of about between $18 to $20. This is pretty much the last research. The older you get, the less ROI you get. But look at the system. The system keeps on investing most funds in K-12 and onwards and not in preschool education. Now, why is that? Because we need to change the language. We need to change how we look at the system. Our global education system is practically broken, and it's fine. We're doing the wrong things. We're sitting here, we're talking about education technology. We're talking about the fourth industrial revolution. We're talking about AI, artificial intelligence. We're talking about bots. We're talking about autonomous cars. This is all great, but the system itself, okay, the people, us, we're still thinking in a mindset of 50, 60 years ago. We can keep on talking about technology, but tomorrow our kids are going to sit in a classroom in front of a teacher that is going to carry on teaching them math. Why is that? Has that anything to do with the language that we use? Is our mindset stuck in a paradigm that we need to change? So basically, I think we need to break those silos. We need to change the environment of how we talk about education and how we look on education. Take, for example, the World Economic Forum report from 2015, if I'm not mistaken. It talks about skill sets and about how the occupations are going to look like between 2020 to 2030. This is not far away. This is tomorrow, okay? And they're talking that by 2030, 50% of the workforce will be freelancers. Now, how are we teaching our kids today in a classroom with a teacher to be prepared for that world? What are they learning inside the classroom? What skill sets do they have or are learning as entrepreneurs or future entrepreneurs because they'll need to be entrepreneurs. They will have to survive somehow by themselves, to be freelancers. They won't have an office. They won't work in a corporate. They will be asked to hire. By 2030, third of the skill sets that will be needed to get any sort of job hasn't been made yet, which means we are in front of a very massive leap that we don't know anything about. So I think we need to change our mindset and start talking about entrepreneurship and about technology as a tool for entrepreneurship. We need to allow our kids to facilitate themselves in the future. Without that, our future will be gloom. We need to change the mindset. We need to change the language. We need to change the classroom. The teacher doesn't need to teach only arts, only math, only history. The teacher needs to be a facilitator across the board. They need to understand all different aspects, all different themes. They need to be able to touch and help each pupil with what they need at a specific moment. This is the future I think that we're going to, and I think that EdTech as a tool is probably one of the most disruptive and most important tools that we will have, but we need to change the mindset of the system and how we treat the system itself and how are we helping to change that world, basically.
Knowing your work, would you mind also expand a little bit about social goods, social businesses, social entrepreneurism? I know that you are very occupied also about this.
Sure. We do what we call impact investing. Impact investing is basically doing business, maximizing revenues, but at the same time, we're measuring and looking at the social good we're doing. EdTech as a vertical is exactly in that area, okay? I think we need to start measuring the impact that we're doing in the education. How many pupils are we helping out? What is the impact in money, in monetization of X pupils learning a new skill set? How would that help? I think that impact investing as a whole globally is a theme that we see a lot of investors sort of like going towards. You see regular investors that used to invest in any sort of company wanting to do something that is also social responsibility, that has a lot of social responsibility, a lot of social impact that is measurable, that they can go back home and say, I'm doing something good, not only making money, while at the same time making a fine return. I see philanthropists on the other side, people who are giving money for social cause, wanting to do it once. They want to invest. They don't want to keep on funding an NGO. They don't want to see their money in a way go to waste, maybe. They want to see it invested. So I think we're meeting in the middle, and I think that it's a really interesting time to be at.
Well, I think that's perfect time for our next speaker.
Thank you very much. Hi, my name is Gali, and I will start by congratulating you for this beautiful event. I'm very honored to be here this afternoon. I'm going to talk about how the Rashi Foundation is driving social mobility, and I will start with, we talk here a lot about the digital revolution and the opportunities, but I'm not here to talk about the opportunities. I'm here to speak about the challenges that the digital revolution is creating. And I learned in this conference, also in China and in Israel, something very similar. So if we take a closer look, actually this is a beautiful picture of the city of Tel Aviv. You're invited to visit if you haven't done so. And it's not that I put this picture by mistake. It's actually when we take a closer look about the high-tech industry, or what we call the ICT industry, the information and communication technology, it is centered mainly in Tel Aviv. 71% of the employees are actually residing in Tel Aviv, and only 9% are in the rural areas, in the periphery of Israel. And this is something that creates a major challenge for us. Why it's a challenge? Because it creates inequality, it creates differences in income, as you can see. If you live in Tel Aviv, you have a very nice income, but the further you go south or north, the income of a household is being affected. And it goes all the way back to education. Actually, the best predictor for a child's fate is his place of birth and the income of his parents. So regardless of the child's skills and potential, the best predictor is place of birth. And this is something that we must change in order to create opportunities, real opportunities for social mobility. The Rashi Foundation was funded by this wonderful person. He's a philanthropist, and he decided to give all his fortune to the state of Israel because he really believed that a strong and prosperous Israel will draw its strength from a society in which every individual and every child can realize his full potential. And that's why he founded the Rashi Foundation 35 years ago. If you look at the numbers, everything is listed here. We work with 66% of the municipalities across Israel, mainly in the periphery. We have more than 150 social programs that we operate for 35 years, and we have 8 affiliate organizations that are connected to us. And why we do that? Because we want to create change. So I think one of the most important things about the Rashi Foundation, that it has its headquarters that sees the entire nation, but it's also very connected to the ground, to the people, within its program, within its affiliate organization. And so we work top down and bottom up, and this is how we make an impact. But I have to say, you know, like everything else, and I think that I'm relating to what Lior said, philanthropy changed. It's still changing in the world, and Israel is no different. We started as a traditional checkbook philanthropy where we just gave money to great programs. And over the years, we became more proactive. We started developing our own programs. We created venture philanthropy, which is very unique because we created some kind of an incubation project with the government. We did a lot of projects that we ran the pilots with, and after we were able to scale them up, the government actually adopted the programs. We have beautiful examples like a feeding program for poor kids that we started, and the government eventually adopted it, but many other educational programs. Nowadays, as Lior said, we are looking at philanthropy more as an investment because we realize that giving money is not enough. We actually need to look at it as an investment. We need to build capacity. We need to build a strong infrastructure for these programs to operate. A program is not enough if you don't have the right infrastructure in place. We need to build sustainability. We need to make sure that every program is looked at a bit like a business plan. We know how we start a program, but we also need to know how we exit. And exit strategy is something that we adopted in the last years. Also, I would just mention collective impact, if you heard the terminology. It's our way to engage all 3 sectors together in order to really move the needle and make a change in Israel. How we do it? How we actually, you know, social mobility is something that is very, very big. What we strongly believe is measurement and evaluation. So we created a scorecard. Actually, all the social mobility indicators that we believe that should happen are being measured with every program. So we have programs from early childhood that are related to brain development, through formal and informal education, young adults, and we have family and community programs. And I would like to give you 2 examples. The first one is Magshimim, one of our greatest programs. Remember I spoke about the challenge that, you know, only 9% of the individuals take part of the Startup Nation, what we call. So we created a program that teaches high school students programming languages and actually train them and provide them with a profession that they can take it later on and start a career. This is one of the most successful programs that we have. We have more than 1,800 students that are taking this program. The other program that I'm going to share with you, and I have a short video, we call it the city-based investment. And because it's a strategy that actually combines everything that I discussed, instead of implementing all these silos program, we decided that we need to enter into a city and to make with the city changes to make it stronger. So individuals will not leave the city to the center, but they will stay, and the city will stay stronger and will enable the growth. I'm right on time. And then here is the movie.
Bright and motivated youth. You could become an architect, a doctor, a pilot, or a government minister. But research shows that growing up in Israel's socioeconomic periphery will have a direct impact on Dayan's future. He needs more opportunities in order to realize his full potential. The Israeli government and philanthropy have invested for years in programs to close gaps in the periphery, but not enough has changed. After 4 years of learning and implementing, the Rashi and Talmud Foundations developed a new approach, where the city, its leadership, and residents working together are the key to better supporting Dayan and other children. This city-based investment strategy focuses on strengthening the social mobility infrastructure in the city and providing equal opportunity for all of Israel's children. City at the Center rests on 5 main pillars. Human capital, developing skills among municipal staff and filling key positions related to social mobility. Data, enabling the city to make decisions on the basis of data and identify obstacles and opportunities. Continuity, successful handoffs along the cradle to career continuum and from one program to another. Public participation, increasing awareness of community members and their involvement in planning and implementation. Long-term outcomes, building the city's capacity to define long-term outcomes that allow everyone to work towards shared goals. In this way, the municipality will be able to take ownership and responsibility for advancing social mobility and opportunities for its residents independently without relying on external interventions. Because the city is the key to change. The Rashi Foundation.
Hi, everybody. My name is Joshua Schwartz, and I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening at the end of a very long day. I want to start my comments with a confession, which is I am not an Israeli. So what am I doing here? Well, I would start by saying many of you probably know that there's a Jewish diaspora, and I live in New York City. My grandparents were in Russia and Europe, and 100 years ago made a decision to travel west instead of to the southeast, and therefore I was born and raised in America, but like a number of Jews around the world have an affinity for Israel and just feel like it was almost by chance that my fate was growing up in the U.S. as opposed to Israel. So I'm an investment banker by day, and I work in the area of mergers and acquisitions and investments. And about 18, 20 years ago, decided to get interested in the education sector and have spent a number of years working in that sector. In the last few years, I started wondering why there's a global trend towards EdTech and a lot of activity, and Israel seemed to be slow to the playing field. And so a few years ago, we partnered with my friend Yaki to launch the summit that he mentioned, which is on the screen here. And the idea of it was to try and increase awareness, because Israel has a number of unique characteristics, which we believe, looking from the outside, are very compelling and should make Israel a global hub for education, and so that's why we decided to get involved and try and stimulate this activity. So I just wanted to spend a couple minutes talking about the characteristics that we see in Israel that make it an exceptional environment for what people tend to call EdTech. And several of the factors which I would highlight are unique local catalysts, abundance of talent, and global leadership in technology. So to drill down on those a little bit, everybody knows there's compulsory military service, which has incredible advantages. Orit was talking about the young people who show up in college with all of the advantages of the life experience that they have led growing up, where they do have to serve, and then they do a lot of traveling. So there are a number of benefits as an American. I wish that we also had compulsory military service, because I think young people would be a lot more mature than they are today. The governments are very supportive with a number of policies, including investment and their approach to IP. And it's also a very attractive commercial market for the development of companies. A lot of experience with cross-border transactions. Outsiders can do business in Israel and feel comfortable that the laws, particularly around intellectual property, work in a way where they can be very comfortable. In terms of abundance of talent, you heard a description of the Technion, and I think you can just tell from the brain power on this panel. There's just exceptional talent in the country. There are leading universities that train a massive number of entrepreneurs. There are a number of scientists and technology professionals that are active. I think it's probably the highest number of per capita scientists and tech professionals out of any country, which is truly amazing. In terms of global leadership, as I think many of you know, Israel has a lot of technologists working on deep technology and solutions in artificial intelligence, things like blockchain, AR, VR, also extensive neuroscience and brain science research. So that creates a deep pool of talent with respect to developing relevant technology. So as we looked at those characteristics, we thought it was a unique confluence of a number of important factors, and then looked at Israel's track record of creating powerful sectors in the economy. And there are examples like cyber tech and water technology, now automative driving. And so, those are three of a number of sectors where Israel, although it's a very small country, has reached a level of really dominance around the world, bringing solutions not just to its own marketplace, but around the world, to China and Africa, et cetera, and the US. And so we firmly believe that EdTech should be the next frontier for Israel, and that EdTech can be a very compelling economic powerhouse for Israel, just like these other sectors that I mentioned. So, we're sufficiently interested in this that we wanted to take things to the next level, and have realized that when a sector like education is developing, what's really needed is capital. And right now there's a scarcity of capital available in Israel for this new sector. And so just like the summit was an initiative to try and raise awareness, we really want to try and help stimulate capital activity as well. There's a very mature VC sector in Israel, but it needs some help to look at education as a sector where they can invest and get both financial returns and social impact returns as well. So we're in the process of launching a fund to invest in companies that have Israeli flavor, most headquartered in Israel, or with Israeli DNA, and with local partners who are in the country and can help to assess opportunities. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Josh. So I'd like to wrap it up for a second before we go to a Q&A session. And how many of you have been to Israel? I mean, there are a few Israelis over here, but I assume not that many. So I want to tell you a very best kept secret. Okay? You know, in China you have the Gaokao, correct? Israel fails miserably on the international Gaokao. If you look on the TIMSS, PISA, all those international standard tests, Israel is unfortunately somewhere at the bottom. Middle, bottom, low end, never mind. But at the same time, we show global results that do not match the standardized tests that appear today. And I think that if we are in an education summit, this is something that should be, you know, something that can guide us. The tests are tests. They do not necessarily measure your personality. They do not measure your GDP. They do not measure your creativity. And as my personal story about my daughter shows, but what we are discussing over here, yes, we have a different mentality. We are doing things differently. But at the same time, we are concerned. Because at the same time, we know that if we keep on doing more of the same, we are not going to maintain our leadership in technology, creativity, and the high-tech sector. And at the same time, we know that if we keep on investing just in the high-tech sector, then we are going to create social gaps that will tear our society from within, and we cannot tolerate that as well. This is, I think, what's the summary of the panel that you have over here, that we are all coming from maybe different perspective, trying to challenge the future and say, okay, yes, we need to shape Startup Nation's future. The future is about the human capital. The future is about the human beings. And how can we do this? By changing the mindset of education. If you remember, Stolzinger yesterday discussed about that the best thing that we learn in Israel are outside of schools. And it actually connected very well to what Steve Wozniak was saying this morning as well in his panel. So at this stage, are there any questions coming from the audience that you'd like us to answer? Yes.
Hi, I'm from Language Education China. I'm from Language Education China. I'm really interested in how Israel as a nation is looking at investing in girls and women in STEAM and STEM learning. If there are any initiatives that Israel as a nation are doing, it would be really curious to learn from. Thank you.
Well, before I let Orit maybe say a lot about that, as I just mentioned to you, my younger daughter is exactly this in this phase where she's today very passionate about going and into some of all those programs that we have, and we have plenty that are trying to promote gender equality in our society. But Orit, you probably have more data.
Do you know how many people live in Israel? Can you estimate, please? How many? 9 millions. Millions, okay? 9 millions. How big is Israel? It's very small. It's okay. Okay, and if we want to keep our competitive advantage, we understand that we should let each person, either boys or girls, to express their potential. And we cannot let half of the population to be out of the job market, out of the high tech, out of the the jobs with the high income. So there are many. There is a gap. There is a gender gap, but it gets a lot of attention now, and there are many programs, government programs, that they provide on the university level. Okay, I do not know about elementary and high school schools, but in the undergraduate level, there are many programs that encourage the universities to close the gap without lowering the academic level. Okay, what we do think is that sometimes we do not like the special programs for different genders. We do not like it because we think that how people think is distributed evenly, more or less, between men and women. So what is attributed to be as a male-dominated way of thinking, a girl can think like this, and the opposite. So we offer different programs to study basic skills, like in computer science. We have more courses for students who did not program before they start their computer science studies at the Technion, or didn't program at all. In the main engineering faculties, mechanical engineering, aeronautical engineering, electrical engineering, they have exposure days for high school female students who come to the Technion to see what it means to be electrical engineers or what to be a mechanical engineer, because in many cases they have misconception what it means. So in the last several years, it was about 5 years ago, it was 7% in these faculties. Now it's about 30%. And on the overall level at the Technion, we have 40% women and 60% men.
I would like to take this idea and maybe expand a little bit. Everything that is related to gaps that we believe that should be closed, we are trying to close them, and when we identify a gap, whether it is a gender gap or social demographic gap, we tend to have, say, a lot of attention from different parts of the society in order to close it. For example, a few years ago, it's been identified that Orthodox Jews lack the skills that actually allows them to maybe to reach to the job market. And this started to become a very severe problem. So they started to provide very unique programs to, let's say, change this future for those for this specific type of society. I believe that today, when we try to take one of those sectors and we try to make a change over there, it's as Gali just mentioned, we try to do it, but then bring it to a certain level and then let it continue by itself. And I think that this is maybe one of the unique things in the Rashi Foundation, that they over the years developed a model. I mean, Gali showed you some numbers, but maybe the numbers for China do not mean a lot. But in the Israel society, those numbers mean a lot, meaning that if, for example, they identify this issue of urban gap, in the sense that if you are in the city, we have the term state of Tel Aviv. If you're in the state of Tel Aviv, you have one future. In the state of Israel, other than the state of Israel of Tel Aviv, you have a different future. And when they developed this program, they have the scale that they can actually do it with so many municipalities. But at the same time, they already know when, at what point they will exit from this and will allow the municipalities to go forward. Any more questions? Well, if you don't have, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So I have a question for Lior. Maybe as you mentioned about impact investment. So do you want to elaborate more? So who are the investors, and what do they expect from the companies or organizations? Also, this question also goes to Gali. So in your foundation, so you started venture philanthropy in 2010, something like that. So do you consider it as impact investment? Thank you.
Okay, so basically impact investment or impact structure is looking at three different aspects, basically. We're looking at returns. As an investor, I expect a fine return. I won't get into maximizing revenues or not maximizing revenues, but I do expect a business return that is equivalent to the average in another industry, okay? So that's the first. Second, I want to measure the social impact, the SROI that it has. I want to understand, it's like a business plan that you have on one side, on the other side you have to have a social business plan. I want to understand how you're going to impact society. What good are you going to do, okay? And how are you going to measure it? Without measuring it, it's air, basically. And the third, which is, I think, the most kind of difficult thing to catch, is the intention. It means the DNA of the company. The entrepreneur that comes to the table, does he or she have the right intention to build something that will have a massive social impact on society? Now, this is kind of tricky, okay? Because
something that we are creating. It's kind of a special model that is, I think the easiest way to describe is kind of a pay-for-success model that you build with the government, that you as a philanthropist, you take the investment and the risk upon yourself. And if the social project succeeds, then the government pays you back. So this is something that we created. But like anything else in investment, I think there is a spectrum. And if we mark the edges between philanthropy and normal investments, I think that the Rashi Foundation is leaning towards more impact-first investments. So, for example, we will invest only in programs that we have a guarantee that impact will be achieved. And if worst come to worst, then it will be a donation. So it really, I think, how you define impact investing is really depends on the organization. For us, we decided this is the best policy that we would like to take, because measurable impact is what we are trying to achieve. And of course, if it will bring us some extra dollars for further investment, it will be great. Thank you.
Can I add something small? I think impact investing or impact companies or startups, for me specifically, it just makes sense. I mean, I don't see as an entrepreneur any other way to build a company. You cannot build a company today that will harm society. You can't build a company that will harm the city that you were born at or the neighborhood that you were brought at, okay? You have to take those things into account, whether it's how green you are, whether it's how you impact kids or grown-ups, it doesn't matter. It has to be accounted for, and you have to be accountable for it when you are building a new entrepreneurship company, anything today. So it has to be in the DNA. And I would like to kind of like maybe challenge you to a new thought. I think it's just like education. We need to think of new structures. Gali was talking about social bonds. It's a very innovative structure, but we need to think of different structures, financial structures, that will come into place, that will allow us to build companies that take into account how they impact society in a better way, not only through the capitalized regular model. So we need to also modelize and build those things at the same time, I guess.
Yaki, could I just add? I'm not sure how many know about this, but there was a very significant announcement earlier today in the afternoon. Tal announced that it was acquiring CodeMonkey, which was an Israeli startup. It was the first EdTech company from Israel that had an exit, and I believe it was the first acquisition that Tal made outside of this country. And when you heard the executives from Tal Education speaking about what they liked about the company, what really struck me was they admired so much the authentic approach that the founders had. The founders got into the business of creating coding curriculum for young children because they really, really cared about children developing the skills to code, because they had themselves got interested in coding when they were very young as a result of their parents' influence, and they wanted to share that with others. And I could say, having been in the education market for a really long time, the only companies in education that have ever succeeded that I'm aware of were founded by people who really, really cared and were on a mission. And it's because you can't create good educational solutions without really caring about outcomes and the quality of what you're trying to do. I have met people who were just in it for a buck, and every single time those people failed. So sometimes we get into a debate around whether it's okay for education to be for profit, and I just feel so strongly that there has to be a profit motive, like Lior was saying, because if you really want to scale something, it takes capital, and the reality is most of the capital is available in the capital markets that's seeking a profit, but you could have it both ways, you should have it both ways, and the recipe for success is really looking for an ROI, but also looking to achieve a mission as well.
Yes.
Hi, I'm from Israel, as you know. So in my mind, there's a huge gap between innovation that is coming from Israel and actually financing locally. Out of the, I think, more than 20 different incubators in Israel, none of them actually focus on education. So the question is, why is that the case in Israel? And more importantly, how can we change that?
I would like to suggest a solution, an answer for this question. It's why are we here? Why did we came all the way from Israel to be part of this global summit? We believe that by creating the conversation between our ecosystem and other ecosystems, this is where we share experiences, this is where we learn from each other, and sometimes there are times when you are in a certain location, but you already maybe see the future in a different place. If we go back to the US market, the US market was saturated with EdTech accelerators a few years ago. You can hardly meet them anymore. And there is a trend that the more that the industry matures, then it becomes like any other industry on the market. And then you also, when you see VCs that maybe specialize in EdTech, now you see more and more general VCs that are also investing in those companies. And if you follow this thought, then the more that the education industry matures, it can actually fit into other acceleration or incubation model, the same way that any other industries do. Now, in Israel, we have a lot of accelerators, for example, the ESP 8200 or the Mass Challenge Israel. And if you look at those accelerators, like 3 or 4 years ago, they had 0 at the companies. Today, they have so many that are actually going through those accelerators. So, and they are general purpose accelerators. So this trend that maybe was more evident 3 years ago in the US, now it is evident in Israel. And so I'd like to suggest that the more that the industry matures, then we are treating this industry as any other industry. And when you have in Israel so many accelerators or incubators, then if you have a business, it should be business. And if I take exactly what Lior said. He said he expects them to be full of impact, but we also expect them to be full of business. So if the entrepreneurs cannot show a business case, they should not ask for pity. They should not ask for someone to give them maybe better terms than other, maybe more successful industries. They should try to fight for it. We are not saying that's easy, but I think that in today's announcement of CodeMonkey is definitely something that we, as Israelis, are very proud of. I think that it is remarkable. We always try to convince the Chinese giants that after investing in the US market, the next market they should look at is the Israeli market. And in our summit in June, we had the people from TAL Education, we had iTutor, we had so many other Chinese companies coming over to Israel, as well as delegations from Japan, from India, from the US, etc. And I think that if we are connecting the dots, it seems like we are in the right direction. So with your permission, I think that we need to conclude our panel. So I would like to share with you a Jewish tradition. We are this week, can we bring this up, please? This week in Israel, this is a national holiday. It is the Festival of Light, or Hanukkah as we call it in Israel. And in this week, it is a tradition to light a candle every day. So we started exactly 3 days ago with the first one, and then the second, and now the third. And this one is the Shamash, the one that is lighting all the others. So Josh would like to maybe do this with me and light the candles.
Only if Avi doesn't want to do it.
Okay. Okay.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher yisrael mitzvah v'tzivanu v'ahalik ner shel Chanukah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher nisim lavotenu b'yamim chakim b'zman hazeh.
Typically at this stage, we also have, we are eating so many donuts, but I think that we ate so many sweets today, so we don't necessarily need the donuts. So, thank you very much for being with us and sharing the things that we bring from Israel, and we really love to be over here, listen to other views, and feel free to approach us with any other questions that you might have. And I wish all of us the rest of successful GAS. Thank you very much.